another episode of Story to Satori. Today we have a beautiful guest all the way from Durban, from South Africa. Her name is Rahila Khan. She is the founder of Leadership in Love in Being Human. And this is her leadership academy, which is called ISHQ Leadership Academy. Welcome to Story to Satori, Rahila.
Thank you so much, Jahnavi. After all the trials and tribulations, here we are. I'm so happy. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's such a privilege and fun to be talking to you and to all our viewership and listeners out there. Thank you very much. Very warm greetings from warm, sunny South Africa. It's a beautiful morning today. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're welcome. So it's been a while since we were trying, and with technology and with problems, especially in the present situation of the coronavirus, there was a lot of problems with our technology, and it was such a slow internet problems here, and I'm facing, I don't know about you. So nice to have you on the show. And so let's start. I don't know where to begin, but then it's been some time since we've been kind of talking, having conversations on LinkedIn, especially. That's the forum where we meet regularly. And I've been observing that you are giving and sharing a lot of spiritual intelligence, I would say. You come from that space of spiritual intelligence, which is so much required, especially in the present conditions where we are going through such a great, uncertainty, turmoil, and people have no clue what's going to happen now, how long we're going to stay home, what is the kind of situation that we're going to face in the future. And so let's begin with, understanding your journey. So I can just give a little bit of introduction more about Rahila Khan from the things that I have learned interacting with her on LinkedIn. She's a person who always loves to share about as she calls, this leadership of love in being. So what I really get, Rahila, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's all about your person as a being. You are a person who is not just a doing person, but you are a being person. And that is the place from where, if we all start living and leading our lives, as well as the lives of others, if we are as a leader in organizations or in any kind of a role that we have, either it could be at home or in the office or in the communities, we could create such a huge difference. And so she keeps sharing a lot of content related to this. And where I remember very recently, you had got a lot of response to one. It was just a picture with a woman with a pot going around, and she's walking, and it's just a kind of I think it was not even a video, it was just a picture, a meme kind of thing. And then the water is falling, there's a hole in the pot and the water is falling, and then there is a conversation happening between the hole as well as the pot. And that really kind of gave so much of engagement in LinkedIn, where a lot of people started thinking about how important it is to even acknowledge those small little, I would say, the flaws that we see in things, in situations especially. So can you just throw light as to how did you start your journey as a leader and into helping others into leadership of love and leadership of being? Where did it all begin?
Thank you very much, Jahnavi. It started when I was very young. I always believed I was different. Always felt like a circle in the square, as it were, and always looking inwardly in looking at who I am and what is all of this about. Sometimes, when I was growing up at home and we had visitors and we would be sitting in the lounge with all our family and friends. And suddenly I'd see myself like a fly on the wall looking in. And I thought, but this is not reality. For some reason, I wanted to see beyond this. And my inner thirst started, at a very young age. And I always wanted to be a teacher, thinking that an ordinary teacher in the classroom, and I became that. My background is education.
Okay.
And having been in the Department of Education in South Africa for over 20 years, in working with children, especially during our democracy when Nelson Mandela was released, we had an influx of so-called Black or African children coming into our schools. As you know, with the apartheid regime, we had a class system of white people, Black, Indian. We were classified as Indian, and then you would have colored. So when these children came into my classroom, and they would come very early to school because they would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, board a train, get off at the station, and then somehow walk to school. And our school might have been 2 kilometers away from the station. And then at that time, I'm talking about 30 years back, they did not have overhead bridges as passenger bridges for pedestrians. And when we provided pastoral care at school in the morning, we had to be in school very early. That's one of our main role functions, is to provide pastoral care. And a child would come running to me and say, ma'am, please come down to the bus stop. Somebody has been knocked. I'll jump into my car, race down to the bus stop, only to find a 5 or 6-year-old in a foil bag. Now, how does a school, or how do humans deal with that? And this wasn't a once-off thing, it carried on, because children are children. They don't know any better. They're coming from so far away, and the inner thirst was to learn English. Of course, these children came into our schools, and we, through the Department of Education, went through the bridging gap of teaching second language learners English. And what I found in the grade 4 class was that we had all these children coming in, and with the bridging gap that we had and the training that we had, we managed to bridge the gap with English. And I found that my second language learners were doing just as well as my first language learners by the end of the year. This is how quickly they absorbed the language of English, because they just so loved it. And we taught through creative drama and through song, and made everything exciting for them. And they were just so amazing, these kids. And then coming through that, we expected a revolution in our country, and there was a lot of political unrest. And the children would come to school sometimes, and they would share how they did not eat in the morning, or that they watched their parents die, or their houses were being looted. It was really gory, and it was so devastating. And then I realized, as a human being, not a teacher, you take off the hat of a teacher. And as a human being, my heart opened out to these children, and the thought came to me, what is the point of teaching English, science, geography, and art when children are hurting so deeply? And at that time, there was a Truth and Reconciliation Forum going on in South Africa. But then, who's helping these kids to get over all this hurt and pain? And for me, that's where the penny dropped. And the first thing I decided was to get out of the fraternity, get out of my profession. And I knew at that time I'm going to be doing something with business and education, but most of all is to teach from the heart center. And in listening to and following through with Nelson Mandela and his teachings of how he had forgiven his oppressors, how he befriended his very enemies, how he forgave them, and he began teaching in his long walk to freedom. The opening line, even in the movie, is, people taught us how to hate one another. Nobody taught us how to love. So if people taught us how to hate, surely we can teach people how to love. And that had been a crystallizing moment for me in shifting and changing my business, which happened in the last, say, 6 to 10 years. And I decided I'm going to become the advocate in leadership. If I work mainly women and children from homes. And when I got my accreditation as an internationally accredited journey practitioner with Brandon Bays, for the viewers out there, you can Google www.thejourney.com. And having my certification to then
Mm,
become an emotional mastery coach, I
mm,
realized how important it is for us as human beings to let go of our toxic thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And science has also shown over a passage of time how we've forgotten to be human beings, how we
mm,
are the worst pollutants on the planet when it comes to emitting toxic thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And it's so interesting that we find ourselves in this space right now where Mother Earth herself has shut off all human beings into our
mm,
own little spaces to go back and introspect, to go back and look at what have we done to our
mm,
motherland, to the mothership, as it were, Mother
mm,
Earth. And as we sit now, what are we guided to doing? And this is what the universal teaching is to go
mm,
back and introspect. Where did we learn to come to the separation of self? Where did
mm,
we learn that we do not belong to the universe? Where did we learn that we don't fit in, that we are, there's two words that come to mind now. One is the ego system, and the other
mm.
is the ecosystem.
Yes,
And
I
with our
remember.
ego system,
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry
yes,
to interrupt, Rahila. Sorry to interrupt,
no
but
one,
then yeah. So I'm curious to kind of, our viewers and listeners also would like me to kind of ask you some questions, which will open up their minds as well. This is a very
sure,
interesting journey of yours. Very interesting journey. You started as an educator, and then you found that the children were needing more of love. Of course, the education as English, maths, science, everything is important, but then the core essence of the being as love was missing. And then you actually went on your calling, you got your calling, and then you left your job and you took up to your coaching, and you talked about the journey. This is a very interesting journey of yours, in fact. So what exactly you are doing, so that, as you said, right now, the ego and the ecosystem, right? There are two things that you talked about just now. So can you tell us,
yeah,
like, in this journey of life, we are all on this journey of life, and as you very much, lot of times you share in your posts, it's all about energy. We are energy beings, and then our energy is all decided about from our thoughts, and then the feelings that you said. I mean, what is the toxic thoughts that we carry, or the toxic feelings? So now, when we
yes,
go ahead and we talk, can you talk more about the ego and the eco? How right now we are in a situation of the coronavirus. We are, as you said, we are all pushed back into our spaces from Mother Earth to retrospect, to reflect, and to get back on our feet with those learnings which we have missed learning. So the eco and the
yes,
ecosystem. Can you just emphasize on that two things? The eco and the
yes,
ecosystem. Yeah.
yes. So, as you know, the ecosystem is a universal interconnectivity of all
Mm,
species of living and non-living things. If you look at the mountains, the rivers, the lake,
yeah.
whatever it is that's there, the cosmos, the stars, the moon, all of that impacts on Mother Earth as well. So we're looking
Mm,
at the cosmos and the atmosphere and Earth as well. So what we make reference to is the Father Sky and Mother Earth. But there has
yes.
to be this balance, right,
Mm,
of electrons and protons, if I may just call it energy field of positive and negative. It
mm,
always has to be in a balance. So what
okay.
happens when there's a thunderstorm?
Mm,
If in the ecosystem, it's
yeah.
it's the imbalance of the atmosphere and the earth in electrons and protons, correct?
Mm, mm,
So it's the same thing in a human body of positivity and negativity in our body. Is the inner thunderstorm that we're carrying comes
mm,
from our past, of generational patterns coming
mm,
from eons ago. So what we're experiencing today is nothing new. We've come through Second World War. We've
mm,
come through other times of the, bubonic plague, and other times where
mm,
there might have been infections. And
mm,
history will show you that. So what
mm,
happens from generation to generation if we've not healed that consciousness of that time of trauma and pain? We
mm,
carry it at a cellular level, and science has shown this. The moment we go through a traumatic experience, and in that moment when we're not aware of our emotions, it gets trapped into our cell receptors. The cell receptors shut down, and all that becomes a repressed cellular memory, which is passed from cell to cell, from generation to generation to generation. So what's going on now is for us to open up our cell receptors and come to a place of total forgiveness, to open into our DNA of, once we release all the toxic thoughts and emotions of this inner thunderstorm, as is in the ecosystem of the physical thunderstorm, it's the same in the human body. Because when we don't release our pent-up toxic emotions and thoughts, that manifests as illnesses within us. Science has shown that 100% of illnesses and diseases is as a result of emotional issues. We've not released that. We put a lid on it, and it's all trapped within us. And this is where, when there's a trigger, we become angry. And we want to hurt the very people that we love the most. If you look in every family, we hurt the people we love the most, because when there's a trigger in that moment, we just shoot off verbal abuse, verbal diarrhea. So right now we're pushed into a corner of how we are going to release all this verbal diarrhea. How are we going to open our cell receptors and let go of all past hurt, pain, and trauma, and not carry it? So whatever we're experiencing here and now is a carryover from the past that we bring into the present. And so often in the busyness of doing, like we're coming to doing and being, we've been so programmed. It's a silent inner programming of conditioning and learned behavior coming from parents and past generation, where our focus only became on materialism. And we became so robotic, like a hamster on a treadmill, that we keep going, going, going without stopping to reflect. What are we doing? Why are we having children? Is it to have children because to continue our ancestral lineage? Are we having children because we truly want to spend time with them and love them? Or are we having children just to provide for them? And then we fall into the rat race of trying to juggle things around, not spending quality time with them. When we come back home very tired, we lash out at them. We don't connect with them emotionally because we're too busy or we're too exhausted. So the ecosystem is that. The ecosystem, on the other hand, Mother Nature knows how to continue that effortlessly. You plant a seed into a fertile ground. The seed will take its nourishment from the dark recesses of the universe, and it will sprout into something. And it will sprout in its own way because it's a natural flow of life. It will sprout up, and then the leaves will face the sun, and photosynthesis happen. And it's such an effortless way of growing and shining and becoming light itself and giving food to all creatures, including humans. But what do? We have not come into that space because our ecosystems took over, because the mind has learned how to self-destruct. In self-destructing, we destroyed Mother Earth. And now's the time to come into this interconnectivity, that there's no separation between humans and the whole universe. We're not separate to that. We got to come into the interconnectivity, into that flow of how Mother Earth is spinning. We need to spin in that same energy field. We can't go against it. We've been going against the flow of life. And that is where the problem is. That is where the challenge is, because even as human beings, we're going against the flow of life because we think our mind knows how to resolve issues. But the mind can't do that. Only you can do this when you're in stillness, when you're in silence, when you go into meditation. So when we come into the flow of the ecosystem, we come to understand our biology. How does anger impact in my body? What happens when I feel angry? You can only experience this as a biochemistry in your body when you're in absolute silence. When you truly feel angry, you take yourself out of everyone else around you, go and find a quiet space, sit there and let it all come up. Don't put a lid on it. we've been conditioned to believe we must not feel our emotions. When children cry, parents say, shush, stop it now. I don't want you to
Yes.
cry. You know, instead of letting the child, let the child express what must come up. This inner thunderstorm has to come up. You got to take the lid off.
Mm,
So we've been conditioned other way around to keep it in. And this
mm,
is how we end up with illnesses and boils and tumors, because the body has no other way of releasing it. So you're going to end up with a big boil as everything
mm,
comes to a boiling point, or a
mm.
tumor because there's no escaping. That energy field has no way of escaping. Because
Yes.
when I work with patients who have
Mm,
tumors or have illnesses, you will see there's a repetitive pattern, especially with cancer patients. I worked with patients who had tumors, and these were removed surgically, and they go into remission, and then a couple months or later it shows up somewhere else.
so what did you
And
do,
after a period of time,
Rahila? Sorry to interrupt again. I'll keep asking you questions. So when you
yeah,
say that, a body is something like a reflection of our mind, and our minds are again, if our mind and body and heart and soul, if they are not in sync, and we just keep doing things without taking into cognizance and then aligning all these, and then there is an imbalance between the ecosystem and the ecosystem. But once we connect
yeah,
with
but
our
we got,
heart, yeah,
yes,
so then
yeah,
our
you see,
mind, yeah. So what
you can
exactly
only
did you
come
do
to
with
a
that
state
patient?
of being.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, Jahnavi, you
Huh.
can only come into a state of being when you release all the toxic emotions. That's what I'm saying.
How
When
does
you
this
release
happen?
that,
Yeah.
you come
How do
to a
you
place of
release it?
calm.
Hmm. Huh.
It's
How do
using
you
your breath. You
breath
connect with
using
your
your breath?
breathing. You connect with your breath. The first
Okay.
thing, what does a mother do
Hmm.
when she's pregnant with a baby?
Hmm.
What do? We prepare for the birthing process through the art of breathing,
Yes.
through the
Yes.
science of breathing, correct?
Absolutely.
So that the
Yes.
baby can be born effortlessly, and how
Yes.
we manage physical pain through the art of breathing. We
Hmm.
do it then, but we don't follow through throughout our lives. It's forgotten then because we're too busy in the mind again. But
Hmm.
if we can practice that the mother taught the baby in the womb how to breathe, isn't
Hmm.
that amazing? The life force energy
Yes.
starts in the mother's, it
Yes, of
starts in the
course.
center of Mother Earth,
Hmm.
of oxygen and carbon dioxide. How does oxygen impact on the human body? 35% of every breath of oxygen is utilized by the brain.
Hmm.
Can you see? So when we come into understanding of that, when we engage the mind in that way of how the breath impacts on the body, how it's impacting in every cell in the body, understand we have millions, zillion cells in the body. Every cell requires oxygen. When we come to that mindfulness, can you see when we are mindful, the thoughts are always about positivity, self-love, self-care, self-nurturing. It's not
Yes.
about how can I hurt someone. It's about how can I look after myself. Nobody teaches us how to love ourselves. So everything starts with the art of loving and giving to self first. When we
Hmm.
love ourselves and open our heart center, the whole of the universe will conspire to bring love to you. You don't need to search it outside of self. So
Hmm.
these are the things that we have forgotten. So that is where emotional intelligence is very important. Emotional intelligence is all about the foundation, and the key of emotional intelligence is
Hmm.
self-awareness. And
Yes.
when we come into self-awareness of understanding our biochemistry, of how even the life force energy works within our biochemistry, automatically what happens? Your psychology changes. Your
Yes.
thinking changes. Psychology is all about the new way of thinking. So when you become calm, centered, and focused, you will open into compassion. You will have greater integrity. You will open into more empathy. And these are the things you know comes from deep within you, and that is your soul's lesson that you learn through your emotionality. Your emotions and your ego, and the lessons that you will learn in your relationships with your parents, your siblings, and your community will open up the new psychology of forgiveness, compassion, that you love yourself enough to forgive yourself. We can open up into all the times human beings went into war, where millions of people lost their lives right here, right now. That's what Mother Earth wants us to do in our homes, is to first and foremost forgive our parents if they did hurt us, for they knew no better. Nobody gave parents a manual on parenting, so they didn't know any better. Can we just open our hearts and forgive them first? Can we forgive our children for we didn't know when and how we hurt them, for not having that awareness?
Mm.
Can we forgive Mother
Yes.
Nature for how we've raped the planet? Never mind raping human beings, we've raped the planet. We've just taken and taken without giving back. So this is where we are sitting now, in opening into that. And the more we release our hurt and pain, the more you're going to come into a state of well-being, the more you're going to come into a place of happiness, because happiness is a state of being. It all happens in the moment. State of happiness, compassion, love happens in that moment. That is enlightenment. Enlightenment only lasts for a minute or two, because what's next? Next,
Mm.
you can be crying. Next, you're in empathy with
Mm.
somebody who's going through pain. So we must understand that everything is temporary. But we got to be so aware that when we're feeling happy,
Mm.
we must truly just let it come, exude it, feel it, love it in the moment. And then what next? Next, I can lean into something that's not so good, not so perfect. So it's about
Mm.
getting this balance right of the positive and the negative and coming into peace and harmony. And that can only happen moment by moment by moment in being in the now. So
Mm.
being in the now is the present. It's a gift that God, that infinite intelligence and Mother Earth is giving us as a present, to be present in ourselves, to come into our divine presence of who we are, as God
Mm.
created us from a seed of love, from a seed of divinity of Father and Mother, the Father Sky and Mother Earth. So the positives and the negatives come into balance. What happens after a major storm? There's total calm. There's
Mm.
absolute calm. So when we can practice that on an ongoing basis, we learn then, when we become emotionally intelligent, when we become spiritually intelligent, how to sit in the eye of the storm. So a storm can go around you, but you remain untouched. You know why? Because
Mm.
your core of your being is centered. Your
Mm.
core of your being is interconnected with the divine energy of source energy, which is the whole universe. And
Mm.
that is how we then come through every challenge in our lives. Therefore, for facilitators like ourselves in holding the embrace, I got to get work done on myself 24/7 in clearing out all my toxic emotions and behavior. Similarly, on LinkedIn, lots of our LinkedIn family, I get these questions. How do you maneuver through the I'm not in a good space? The best is
Mm.
to sit and breathe, feel in your body where that energy is stuck.
Mm.
Feel whether you are too much in your mind. Is it stuck in your throat because you cannot vocalize? Is it in your tummy where you can't eat? That's where emotional eating happens. Is
Mm.
it in your tummy where it's all in a knot?
Mm.
When you close your eyes, you take yourself in there, literally into your body, like you have your eyes are X-ray machines. It's
Mm.
scanning your body from your brain down to the tips of your toes, and you keep doing that. And you, with practice, you will feel where you are knotted, where the
Mm.
energy field is stuck. Using your breath, you'll bring all your energy to that place in your body. Breathe into it.
Mm.
Can you feel? And just try it with me, all right? Just breathe
Yeah.
deep right into your belly button. Breathe with me. Hold and slowly release.
Yeah. It's a very, very calming, and actually you get centered and grounded. So you talked about, Rahila, you talked about breathing, which is a very powerful tool. You talked about the scanning of the body and seeing where the energy blocks are, whether you're getting stuck here in the throat or your head. And apart from these, is there any other way? Because they could be beginners, right? And they could find that this is too much of a knowledge, and they may not be able to actually understand a lot of this stuff, which is, what you talked about: spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence. You talked about the ecosystem and the ego system. You talked about forgiving. So if suppose there is a novice and then there is a beginner, so how do they start? Because when you're working with children, and children are so very young, they don't understand a lot of these things. So how do you deal with the children who are definitely full of energy, but at the same time there could be peer pressure, there could be these kinds of squabbles and between them, or any kind of a competition which is not healthy. So how do you tell them, apart from these two techniques, what are the other things that they can get, so that they understand that we are not just human doings, we are human beings, and we need to step back, we need to actually look at the whole universe as something like a co-creation. It's not something to just, as you said, it's not to be rampaged upon and you just kind of exploit from mother nature, but you also give back to mother nature. So how do you make them
Sure.
aware in the beginning?
Okay. So
Yeah.
here's a technique which we did when we did the outreach work throughout South Africa and through, thousands of schools and
Mm,
children. And this is what I would encourage parents to do in the home. It's parenting skills, but also for children themselves. Now that they're at home, lots of them can do this on their own as an activity. So you will have two sheets of paper. On one
mm-hmm,
sheet, you could write down all the negative emotions or feelings:
mm,
sad, pain, hurt, and a whole host of those negative feelings and emotions. And
mm,
on the other page, on the other chart, they would write down other words that brings out positivity. So they
mm.
can have joy, happiness, respect, understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. All these words can be on the next chart. So
Okay.
now that parents are at home with children, they can do this as a family activity.
Mm,
And I think this is the most important part of our conversation.
mm,
In us, in our evolution of becoming from a state of doing to a state of being, we need to tap into our emotions. And the
mm,
best way to start is, how am I feeling when somebody speaks badly to me? How
mm,
does it make me feel when I'm given all the household chores to do? How
mm,
does it make me feel in the workplace where everything is lumped on me rather
mm.
than someone else, where I'm
Yeah.
overloaded and somebody else gets away with blue murder? It
Mm,
starts in the home, right? But also, some children we found in South Africa don't have parents. Therefore, you
mm,
don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand emotion. And
mm,
just doing the simple activity, even teachers who are listening to us out there can do it. Even lecturers in the lecture rooms can do it. It's such a basic skill in
mm,
just writing down. For us, we can do a journal of what emotions grip you the most. Is it pain? Is it anger? Is it what is it? Where do you
mm,
feel hurt, or your inability to vocalize, right? So
mm,
when you know what it is you don't want, then you will
mm.
know what it is you want, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can only fill a cup when it's empty. You can
Yes.
only fill this body when it's empty. You
Mm,
cannot go and fill your body with compassion when you're
mm,
sitting with all this rage and anger that you have about your parents
mm,
or ancestral lineage or
mm.
war or something that happened to you. You got to let go of that first.
Yes.
Forgiveness is a beginning step to
Mm,
compassion.
mm,
Because only when you forgive, something lifts within you, something shifts
mm.
within you, where you start feeling lighter. Can you see
Yes.
that? So when
Yes.
you're feeling lighter, then you fill yourself with all this spiritual intelligence. Is, if you look at words, it's
Mm,
compassion, love,
mm,
all these words: integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, wisdom,
mm,
resilience. This is all emotional.
mm,
Spiritual
mm,
intelligence words, as in positive embedded commands that you can re-engineer your
mm,
biochemistry. So let's
mm,
just say our DNA is a human computer hard drive. I don't think this would be difficult for everyone to understand how a computer is. When you get a brand new computer, it can't do anything except just be there until you
Yeah.
put a software in it. It's the same thing in
Right.
the mother's womb. When the seed is planted from mother and father of the DNA, it is that computer. What is the programming that we're going to give for a child? Is one of magnificence, one of unconditional love, one of compassion. And when we feed that sack of that mother and father of the DNA, that new programming, the child who's coming into the world, that soul will come into them. However, for other souls like us who have already come and our parents didn't teach us that, we need to clean out that computer hard drive. Let's get rid of that virus first from the computer, which is our
Yeah.
DNA. Once we lift the veil of that, once we shift the consciousness of the old, of the pain, the struggle, the hardship, the oppression, the slavery, all the indoctrination that we got from societal conditioning and beliefs. When we start clearing that out, what do? We now install a new programming. And the
Yes.
new programming will be your second chart of all the positive embedded commands. I am resilient. Love overcomes fear. Can you see your
Yes.
new affirmations and beliefs? That is what you feed your mind, body, and soul. That is the gist of coming into being, is where you're training your mind to let go of the old program and bring in a new program. Can you see
Yes.
that? So the
Absolutely.
OP is the old program, and the new will be
NP.
NP, new program. So the
Yeah.
NP would be I am love. I am
Yes.
light. My body is filled with God's light. My every cell is capable of healing. My every cell is capable of healing. When we start writing these things down and we say it 24/7, remember every cell in your body has the intelligence to take it on. So it will. Because you emptied the cell receptors of all the old, the cell receptors stay open now to receiving all the new positive embedded commands, the new programming. So what happens in the biochemistry? The brain then releases all the beta endorphins, the dopamine, which is feel-good
And
hormone, the
endorphins,
serotonin
hormones.
kicks
Yeah.
in. And when you do that 24/7, that becomes your mantra 24/7. You eat it, you drink it, you sleep it, the new programming. I am love. Love overcomes fear. I am part of the universe. I belong to God and the universe. My parents are loving, caring, and nurturing. My parents are loving, caring, and nurturing. When we saying that, we're putting out a whole new prayer to God and the universe of the Father Sky and the Mother Earth and the union of Mother and Father. And the union of Mother and Father is who we are in our DNA. That is for all life. The male
Yes.
and female is all life. So in
Right.
our DNA, we have both male and female. Therefore, we cannot judge males. Therefore, we cannot judge females. And in how we bring the new human into being with our new DNA. And that is why, for me, in Leadership of Love, the foundation of what I do is re engineering the DNA for new humanity. Re engineering the DNA for new humanity in bringing in this new programming of creating new DNA. We can absolutely create a DNA filled with compassion. Science has shown this. We
Yes.
can create. My DNA resonates love. My DNA resonates compassion. And when we open our DNA into being compassionate and empathetic, that's what the whole universe will be. And this is where we give to Mother Earth, because we'll be so compassionate to every small creature out there. We won't hurt them. Do
Yes.
you see? It's
Yeah.
very basic step. I hope I answered your question
Yes,
and made it
absolutely.
easier for the
Yeah,
listeners and viewers to
absolutely.
understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the forgiveness that you talked about, what most of people think is it's about them, whoever we are forgiving. It's about releasing your own emotions of whatever that is about them. You're releasing those emotions and you are letting go of all those negative, toxic thoughts and feelings, and you're becoming lighter. It's not about them at
Yes.
all. It's about you,
No,
right? So it doesn't
it's
mean
about
that they are not,
me.
yeah. So what I was
It
saying,
is
Rahila,
about
was, yeah.
it is
Hmm.
it is about me forgiving myself,
Hmm.
forgiving my parents and my whole ancestral lineage,
Hmm.
because that's how my DNA came to be,
Hmm.
in not releasing all the past hurt and pain of war, of
Hmm.
not releasing that, so I can forgive myself first. Forgiveness
Okay.
comes from two words: for
Hmm.
and give,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So in the human experience, it's all about the pain, the hurt, and the ego system, correct?
Hmm. Yes.
Right. And in the ecosystem, it's all about God's plan
Hmm.
for us. What is the infinite intelligence, which is God, showing us through the human experience of forgiving ourselves? What is the soul lesson? So we
Hmm.
thank God for giving us those painful experiences, and
Hmm.
we forgive. But actually, we thank God for giving us those bad experiences for our evolution.
Wow.
Right now, we thank the coronavirus for being
Yes.
there, and God orchestrated it for us for our healing.
Yes.
Never before did humanity awaken to this level of emotional and spiritual intelligence right now. What a gift it is.
Yes.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
the secret and the soul lesson here, God wants us to clean out our own inner virus in our own computer hard drive, so that the DNA of humanity and the whole planet can shift into love.
Yes. So it's a
And
huge
you see
Herculean
that?
task. Yes. The whole
So,
universe
so
has to, everybody has to do it. Now, I have a question here,
yes,
Rahila. What if there
yes.
are few people who are really practicing this? And do you think everybody can do this, or only few can do this, or how is this? As you said, the
You see,
consciousness is increasing right now. It's definitely it's
yes,
much higher, and that's the reason why we are getting such tougher lessons to learn. So,
yes.
in the process, what's going to happen? I mean, as we're going to learn tough lessons, we're going to come up with a higher consciousness, no doubt. But then, how is this going to take shape? What do you see? I mean, I'm sure you're
I
not an
just,
astrologer, but then, as a
yeah,
practitioner of the recharging and reprogramming of the DNA, where do you see, where we're going to be in the future?
I just love you so much. You ask the most amazing questions, and
I'm
it,
asking many
honestly,
questions,
I
I
love
believe.
this
I love to.
question.
I love
I
to
so
ask
love this.
questions.
Yes,
Thank you.
and it's only through questions that we find the answers,
Yes,
and only in
absolutely.
silence I found these answers. And what came to me
Yeah.
is this:
Oh.
in life, we always have choice. By my choice coming through my evolution in this lifetime, I chose to find myself.
Hmm.
I chose to do this inner self discovery, in looking at inner mastery and how
Hmm.
to master this mind, body, and soul.
Hmm.
And by choice, only we can. When you come into meditation, the only way to silence the mind in meditation is through our five senses.
Hmm.
And meditation is not necessarily only finding a quiet time, sitting there and zoning out. Sometimes that can be quite an escapism.
Hmm.
When meditation is a way of life. When I
Hmm.
eat a fruit, how does it taste? How can I hear it? How am I tasting it? What am I seeing? And how
Hmm.
do I feel when I swallow it? If we can do this and be mindful in our eating, in our breathing, in
Hmm.
looking at all the colors that nature has given us, that is the
Hmm.
greatest source of healing, because color really heals a lot as
Yes.
well. Every color, as you know, represents a different energy center in the body.
Yes.
So when we master all of this and we come
Hmm.
to learning about colors and how colors can help us calm us down. Right now, blue and violet and purple is a very healing color for us.
Yeah.
The more we
Hmm.
wait and breathe it, the calmer we'll become. Red
Hmm.
is a very passionate color as well, right? And that can bring a lot of passion, but it can also make you go on overdrive. So, can you see
Hmm.
how nature is teaching us in so many different ways? So, coming
Hmm.
back to your question, is we all have choice. We all have responsibility, which I call self-responsibility. Nobody can change me, and I cannot change anyone else. It has to come from each person in where they are in their evolution. There is no quick fix, there is no band-aid. So only we can, when I'm sitting in prayer and in healing, in meditation, I'm putting that out for myself, my children, my family, my extended family. Can you see the ripple effect? It starts from self, my immediate family, my neighbors. Love thy neighbors first. So I'm sending that vortex of energy to my neighbors right now. Then to my whole community where I live, to my city, my province, my country, my continent. The whole of Africa right now is receiving healing through this podcast. And then we're sending it out to every corner of the globe. So it takes one person, Rahila, to sit here in South Africa and send this vibration out. When you have a positive thought and intention, it has wings of its own. The infinite intelligence will carry it through. And this is why right now, only prayer and pure intention can save the human race.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I think
when
I got
I
the right
shift,
answer. I got that perfect
yeah,
answer when you said it's all about intention, and it's like, you cannot change the world, but you can definitely change yourself. And when you change yourself, you see that changed everywhere. It kind of
yeah,
it ripples. It's got the ripple effect, as you said. Yeah.
yes. So what I
Mm,
bring about as an individual in what I know from a place of
mm,
knowingness, from sitting with many masters and working in this body of mine, I
mm,
know that I'm making a shifting global consciousness right now.
mm,
The
mm,
very people who don't know me, nobody needs to know me, but they know I'm sending out these vibes for healing. It doesn't matter who you are.
mm.
Because what the universe has taught me as well in the interconnectivity, we are all interconnected. And that
Yes.
is the ecosystem I bring from a place
Mm,
of divinity, of shifting consciousness, of bringing love into the planet. And
mm,
with love, we can overcome any kind of fear or calamity. I know this,
mm,
and if you just have to hold somebody, even if it's an animal, you hold them and you nurture them, it
mm.
brings so much love. It immediately shifts the consciousness. So it
Yes.
takes one human being to sit in meditation or to put a power of intention and prayer out to reach 1 million people. It takes one person to reach 1 million. And I think that's very powerful.
That's very powerful. Absolutely, very powerful. Because my question was, exactly that. What you see the future is like each person can actually light that candle of which just light spreads across the world. It need not necessarily be you go and change the world, but then if you just sit and do that intentional, as you said, meditation and connect to your inner being, that itself could become a great, great transformation for many people around you and the whole world. So I want,
100%.
yeah. So I'm curious to know now, listening to all the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared, and the love that you are actually, as you said, the leadership of love that you are talking about, and you are teaching it to many, many people all across the globe. How did this, the one last question before we close this session? We can go on and on, but then we have the time limit as well. So the last question would be, how did this, the whole thing that you're doing, how did you get inspired from, as you did say that it started from a young age when you sat in the, with the people in your, in the veranda of your bungalow in South Africa, and suddenly you felt like a fly on the wall, and then you are just observing things and you're not fitting in there, and you wanted to kind of do something different. But then if you just reflect back or try to connect the dots, where do you think it must have all started, and how, I mean, so that people also come to know your story, as because my whole intention about Story to Satori, which the show talks about, is it's actually a journey where a person like you or anybody on my show shares the story, but then we all have that moments of Satori where we actually get those insights of being in the light, being in wisdom, and connecting to our power, And I wanted to know from you, how did this actually, where did this get ignited? Where was that source of ignition?
Okay, very quickly then. When
Yeah.
I decided to leave the teaching
Mm.
fraternity, I bought
Mm.
a franchise. The
O-
franchise was called Earn and Learn, Reach and Teach. It was
Okay.
such an amazing franchise because, as much as we were teaching entrepreneurship, it also had a huge component in training self empowerment.
Mm.
And I found with the lateral thinking skills and looking at the emotions and looking at teaching young entrepreneurs, we were teaching children from the age of 13 to adults right into the 80s how to
Mm.
open their minds into lateral thinking and think innovatively and become young entrepreneurs.
Mm.
That part of the franchise for me spoke to my heart and soul because I found as I was training that, I
Mm.
saw the difference in my own child who was also part of the program. At that
Mm.
time, he was 12. And then
Mm.
I worked with other children and I saw how the confidence was boosted when we
Mm.
spoke about emotions, we spoke about competition, and how that impacted on the self worth, self esteem, where the businesses or they're young, and how their small business ventures didn't do well. And
Mm.
when they compared themselves with other children, how damaging it was to their self esteem. And the
Mm.
more we went into that part of the training program where we unpacked all the emotions and bringing
Mm.
in a higher frequency energy to dissolve that, I
Mm.
began to see the shift in them, in how it was impacting on the biochemistry. And
Mm.
simultaneously, as I'm doing the work, what it was doing to me inwardly, something was ignited each time. And the
Mm.
more that spark was, as spark leads to a flame, and the
Mm.
flame began growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And it led from, and of course, the business didn't do well. When I left the fraternity, I invested most of my finances into that,
Mm.
and the business didn't do well because we were 10 years ahead. People were not ready for this kind of work.
Mm.
Having said that, I went back to teaching to support myself. So I did my business and I was in a job simultaneously.
Mm.
And then I went into the Journey Practitioners Program. And
Mm.
I found that when I went back to teaching and as I was doing the Journey Practitioners Program, I
Mm.
used the tools, the permission of the principal, I used the tools of the journey with the children in my class. And I
Mm.
found how that ignited a space of healing for children in the classroom and
Mm.
how that unpacked their potential to perform better. So my weakest child was performing absolutely magnificently as well. And what
Mm.
was nice is that it brought all of us on the same page of healing. It
Mm.
wasn't about getting the best grades anymore or winning the most prizes or awards. It was
Mm.
about how to be the best human being in opening up into compassion. And I saw them, the children in schools, even with the outreach work. For me, that was the most awe inspiring experience that I had. And that's what ignited my passion in working with humans, in allowing us to release all this pent up toxic emotions that we carry and all the baggage of the past. And that became my passion. And for the past 20 years, that's all I've been doing
Wow.
in working with women, in doing self-empowerment. And the gift of all of this is once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. The second
Yes.
part of it was learning business skills, learning about problem solving and conflict resolutions, thinking outside the box. All these skills boded so well for me in doing different projects in South Africa, in
Mm.
managing the outreach work for the Journey International in South Africa, where we did
Mm.
major projects at correctional services, through a medical train in South Africa via psychological services. So all of that, ignited my passion. And that is where we were doing so much outreach work. And it brought me to a point now, after 30 years of doing this work, to a place of total silence and just sharing this
Mm.
wisdom with everyone. So, yeah, every bit of my experience has allowed me to become who I am today.
Wow. That was an excellent, kind of a journey that you took me through, right from the phase when you left your job, you found your calling, but at the same time, you experimented with business and you applied that. So all that you're talking is all experiential. It's nothing like it's just in the head. You have tasted those failures as well when you were applying. The children were getting the, actual the benefits, but then, as you said, you're 10 years ahead of your time, and sometimes it does happen. And now you're actually sharing all that you have learned to the world. So it was really so nice having you on Story to Satori show. So as a parting gift, what would you like to share to the viewers and also the listeners? I would be converting this into a podcast as well, and this is going to go across the world and all social media. And also, how can they contact you just in case they want to experience as you said, reprogramming the DNA, and you have been offering so much of that emotional mastery, emotional intelligence, and then you come from a background of education, then you have a business angle as well, and then now you are a kind of coach, as well as you have the experience of bringing leadership and love together, and you're talking about reprogramming right to the level of DNA, where there is a lot of change in the biochemistry of our beings. It's not just being in the sense we think it's just a philosophical term. Most of us think, it's doing, being. Again, it's become a cliche kind of a thing. But you're talking about changing the DNA with the biochemistry, the changes in the emotions, the changes in the way we think and talk, and the endorphins at the level of hormones. So can you just give a parting kind of a gift to the people, and how can they get in touch with you so they can get transformed?
Sure. Sure, Jahnavi.
Yeah.
3 words. One is biology, 2 is psychology, 3 is sociology, in that order. When we find ourselves, we change our psychology, and then our sociology changes. In the family, in the business. That's why my profile is leadership of love in self, family, business, education, and health. Because it all comes to that. That's what society is all about. That's what a community building is all about. It starts with self first. You want to
Yes.
make a difference on the planet, start with you first. The other parting shot is right now everyone's gone into fear for not knowing whether you're going to earn. The new currency is going to be human potential. Our new currency. The new currency is going to be happiness and inner peace. And we, in releasing all the pent up fear, we come to a place of stillness in how our DNA can create a whole new being, a whole new way of life, in how we can create something from nothing, where we all become the best alchemists. Knowledge is about experiencing the knowledge. It's not about textbook knowledge or head knowledge. It's pointless having all these degrees and being a specialist in whatever you do if you're not making the change within yourself, in your family, and in your own society. What is the use of education? The other is that everything we learn, we must implement and experience on a daily basis. We got to put it to good use. What is the point of having it otherwise?
Yes.
So it's very important to come to that place and know that we learn from Mother Earth, in that when you plant a seed, when you nurture it with love and light, it grows into something magnificent, like the sunflower that shines in the beam of the sun. So it's the same process with us right now in a dark place. Let us plant in a fertile ground of our DNA. How do we want our future life to be? If our wise future you could speak to you, what would that wise future you say to you about what changes can you make? Excuse me. What is it that you're going to be doing differently going forward? How are you going to be the best version of being human first? How can we open our DNA into compassion? And that is the missing ingredient in human being is love. That the key missing ingredient is you. The essence within you is love. So it's not missing. You are that. You're created from love. And
Yeah.
these are the strong messages we need to self-talk right now. I love myself. I love who I am. And when we love ourselves, that is the miracle cure. There's no better miracle cure than love. So I thank you so much for
Wonderful,
allowing me.
wonderful. Wonderful, and it was such a powerful message, and really loved having you on my show. Thank you very much, Rahila, for the beautiful parting message that we have to just go inward and love ourselves, and that is what is going to create the whole transformation. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
being on Story
you're
to Satori.
welcome. And know that the divine in me greets the divine in you as we greet the divine in all of humanity today. Much love and
Yes.
blessings, Jahnavi. Go well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being
Thank
on the
you.
show. Thank you. Thank you.